Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Paul Little, and I am so grateful to be on Ambitiously Driven with Riddell Gardner. Today, we'll talk about guarding against burnout. Check it out.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Ambitiously Driven. I'm your host, Riddell, and I want you to like, share, and subscribe. On this episode, we're getting ready to talk about guarding against burnout. And I'm so honored, I'm so excited because I have a very special guest on this podcast. He is just a phenomenal man, a phenomenal leader, and I'm just humbled to have him to sit here to dialogue with me to talk about guarding against burnout. And that is the Pastor Paul Little. How are you, sir?
Mama, I made it. I am on Ambitiously Driven. I'm going to retire.
Oh, my
I have made it
goodness.
to the podcast of all podcasts. I'm checking it off my bucket list, and I can die and go see Jesus at this point. I'm grateful. I appreciate you having me, brother.
I am so humbled to have you with me on this podcast. So I'm not going to delay any time. I'm going to hop right in it. Can you tell me in your own words, what is burnout and what causes burnout?
Yeah. First of all, thank you for this critical topic. So many people deal with burnout, and we oftentimes try to avoid the conversation, but these are critical conversations that we must have if we're going to be healthy and whole as it relates to the spaces that God has called us to occupy. So burnout is a condition of extreme exhaustion spiritually, mentally, emotionally, and physically. So it is holistic burnout. It is holistic exhaustion where everything in my life is at a deficit. It is a place where I have drained myself in such a way that I have no sense of fulfillment. I have no vitality, no energy, because I've been moving and clicking on all cylinders, but there's been some kind of dysfunction that has caused me to feel as though I can work, and never have to recreate and refresh myself. So I think what causes burnout, I think is important to say that we don't burn out because we do too much. We burn out because we do too much of the wrong thing.
Wow.
Burnout happens when we do things that are outside of God's calling for our lives. Because when I have a healthy understanding of what God has called me to do, it gives me vision and focus to help me also to know what not to do. And a lot of people have a sense of focus about what to do, but they hadn't gotten to the point where they've matured enough to know what not to do. And it's a very critical conversation because a lot of leaders that I work with and mentor and individuals in our church and in the community, they've dealt with this critical issue. And I think it's a very important conversation for us to have.
How can a person guard against burnout? I know you said it's doing the wrong thing. So how can we guard against it to not experience it?
Yeah. So I think the key is holistic wellness, right? So for a person like yourself and myself and others who are visionaries and go-getters, right? We have a variety of gifts and different things that we feel called to, various spaces that we occupy. It's important that we have a wellness plan to guard ourselves against burnout. The medical condition is called chronic fatigue, of which I was diagnosed in 2019. Yeah, I was diagnosed with chronic fatigue in 2019, had to take a leave of absence from our church. And just ripping and running in a way that was not conducive for the purpose that God had for my life at that time and still has for my life. One of the ways we can guard against it is understand that there are some pillars of wellness that we need to adopt. And the first one I would say is spiritual maturity, right? Making sure that I'm feeding my soul with the word of God through prayer, right? Healthy expressions of spiritual practices so that I can make sure that I'm not putting out more than I'm taking in, right? So spiritual maturity. The second one will be emotional stability, right? Taking care of my emotional wellness, healthy expressions of toxic emotions that I may be feeling. It's okay for me to verbalize those emotions and have a sense of clarity around what are the spaces and the places that causes emotional damage in my life. And then there's what we will call physical vitality, right? Exercising, eating right? Making sure that we're not mismanaging the temples that God has given to us. And then the last pillar I would say would be mental clarity, focusing on mental health, focusing on not draining ourselves. You know, I was having a conversation with a pastor who many of us know, and he said the other day, he says, we don't even think about the fact that even our phones have to be charged up.
Wow.
Right? So we put so much energy out into the world in the spaces that we occupy. We have to remember that we must refill those buckets spiritually, physically, mentally, and emotionally in order to guard ourselves against burnout. And I think that comes with structure and order in our lives so that we don't continue to mismanage the time and the energy and the efforts that God has entrusted to us.
Wow, that's good. You talked about you experiencing that in 2019. Can you walk us through that?
So January of 2019, my wife and I, like we do every year, we sat down and we had a vision conversation. We have goals of what we want to accomplish as a couple, right? We're sitting in Wild Wings on, Lake Joy and Houston Lake over in Kathleen.
Yeah.
And we're eating and we're having our vision conversation. And my wife says to me, I want you to pull back on your schedule and I want you to do some things differently this year than you've done last year. So my first question is, as a husband, I said, do you feel like I've neglected you from a marital standpoint? And she looks at me and she says, not at all. I said, well, if you're not neglected, what are you telling me that I need to do differently about my schedule? She says, you have not overlooked me or misprioritized our marriage, but you have overlooked and misprioritized your own health.
Wow.
She said, you don't go to the doctor, you're not doing what you're supposed to do, and you're ripping and running in a way that's not conducive for how much you give out. She says, I just want you to consider that. And like a godly, spiritual man like I am, I ignored her. I did the total opposite.
Wow.
In June, we went to New York, and we had some downtime like we do every year. We always take vacations.
Yeah.
That was not the issue. So we were relaxing. I got home, Riddell, and I sat on the sofa from New York. We had stayed in a beautiful place in Times Square, went to Broadway, all of that. I sat down on the sofa, and I felt like a Mack truck hit me. And she says, why are you looking that way? I said, something is wrong. Something is clearly wrong. And I noticed a pattern. Every time we took a trip during that time frame, I was so tired on the trip that I couldn't even enjoy the trip. I was physically getting sick when I was slowing down. Why? Because that adrenaline had stopped. And every time I slowed down, I was vomiting. I was having these sweats. You know what I mean? Wow. My body was telling me, this is not conducive for health and wellness. And so when I finally went to the doctor and had some conversation, my doctor told me, he says, I'm diagnosing you with chronic fatigue. I said, what's that? He said, that's the clinical term for burnout. I said, black people don't burn out. That's what I said ignorantly. I said, we just do what we got to do. He said, if you keep doing what you got to do, you're going to die.
Wow.
And that was 2019. I took a leave of absence from the church the last part of the year, around November, December, brought in different preachers. And, of course, going into 2020, March, we know what happened, right?
Yeah.
So the pandemic, I tell people, literally saved my life. Wow. Because it gave me a time to regroup, wow. right? Revise my strategy, my personal strategy, and put some better systems and rhythms in place to ensure that I was in a healthy and a whole place as I was giving out so much to so many people. So it's personal for me when you talk about this topic. And again, I'm grateful that you're having the conversation, that we're having the conversation, because a lot of people are watching this and they feel exhausted.
Oh, yeah.
But Riddell, we live in a grind culture. Whew. We got to hustle. We got to get it. And we don't realize that's toxic, it's not sustainable, and ultimately it's dangerous to our souls and to our bodies.
During that time, did you have like a spiritual moment with God? Like, what did he share with you, or what insight did he give you during that time of burnout, or even during that pandemic to regroup that saved your life?
It went back to the scriptural principle of shalom, right? The Hebrew concept, which is wholeness, peace. But peace is not just mental. We oftentimes, limit peace to being mental, but it's actually holistic from a scriptural, specifically Hebrew perspective. And as I prayed and continued to seek God through prayer and the Word, I start seeing these healthy expressions in the Word of God of how wholeness and wellness was normalized. For example, there's this incredible book by a gentleman named Alan Fadling called The Unhurried Life. And he uses this example of a professor who spoke to his class in a college environment and says, I want you to pick one word to describe Jesus when you read the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. He says, people raise their hand and says, powerful, loving, mighty, right? All of these terms, right? Savior, right? And they asked the teacher, the professor, they said, what word would you use when you look at the Gospels, when you survey the life of Jesus? You know the word it was, Riddell? Unhurried.
Wow.
You've never seen Jesus busy or rushing. The Bible tells us that Jesus rested. The Bible tells us he took a nap on a boat, right? He withdrew and told his disciples, come apart with me for a while, right? We see this consistently throughout the Bible, but we read over it because we want to get to the miracles and raising the dead and feeding the hungry, right? But Jesus rested. And I figure if my master can take a nap on the boat, I need to find me a boat and I'm going to take a nap too. That's my mindset right now. I'm not trying to raise the dead every day. At some point, what you doing? I want to be like Jesus. What you mean? I'm taking a nap on a boat. Where? Probably Miami this week. You know, next quarter it'll be San Diego, right? So we got to really prioritize our rest and our wellness because it really does help to refuel us for the purpose that God has for us.
You said your wife sat down, looked at you eyeball to eyeball, and said, like, hey, you need to reprioritize your personal life, your health, because you're moving here, you're ripping and running, but you're overlooking your personal healthy stuff. How did that make you feel to not listen to her?
Initially, I was embarrassed. I thank God for a loving, encouraging, supportive wife because, you know, the one thing she did not do, she never said, I tried to tell you.
Wow.
And that's what I was waiting on. Like, she's going to get on me.
Wow.
Because when I told her what the doctor stated, she says, what do we need to do to fix this? And we put together a personal plan. I call them rhythms and systems of what we need to do each week, each month, and each quarter to ensure that we are taking care of ourselves spiritually, mentally, emotionally, and physically. And to this day, 5-6 years removed, we still follow that plan. And I'm in my healthiest and the most well of places that I've been probably in my whole life of 44 years of living on this earth.
Wow.
Because I found a pattern in the Word of God, and I found principles to help me to shift and to transform my habits so that I can start living a sustainable life. So, you know, when you have a great godly woman, they'll nurture and encourage you. Now, if she ever saw me, and when she sees me, like I'm getting to the edge of pushing, she'll say, "Don't forget that you got to take it easy." And I listen. I listen because I'm not going to be guilty of not listening twice, right? Wow. I made that mistake the first time. So now let me not ignorantly, overlook what she stated to me. And it has helped to replenish me and to rejuvenate me in a way that has benefited not only my marriage, but my relationships, my pastoral ministry, my entrepreneurial endeavors. Every part of my life has grown and become more fruitful when I've taken care of the inner space of my own soul.
I love environment because environment shapes how we move, how we grow, and how we can guard against burnout. Mm-hmm. So how can someone that may not have the support like your wife was to you to kind of, not want to say like forewarn or kind of discern the times to help you slow down? What could be said to that person that doesn't have that support or environment?
That's a great question.
To guard against burnout.
That's a great question. I'll use an illustration to clarify my answer to the question. There was a point in my life where I did not have the economic resources that I have now. And when I, purchased my first car with the help of my parents, there are times I had to pray my way through repair time because the check engine light come on and I'm saying, oh, Lord. I think that's why I learned how to speak in tongues when the check engine light came on. I just started going off. You know what I mean? Like, Lord, not now. I ain't got the money right now. And my dad, who was a mechanic naturally, like he could take a car apart, tried to instill that trade and those skill sets in me when I was young, but I was too big. I wanted to go play basketball. I wanted to go hang out, and I never learned. But he told me something one day. I was maybe 17 or 18. He says, whenever that light comes on or any indicator comes on, it's a warning signal to say to you, if you don't deal with this now, you're going to pay for it later. Wow. So the maintenance is always cheaper than the repair, right? It's cheaper to get an oil change than it is to replace a transmission. Wow. I ain't trying to preach. I'm just feeling what I'm feeling.
Go ahead.
And so you know what I learned when to this person, whoever this individual may be, something on the dashboard of your soul is telling you you're doing too much. Wow. Your emotions are telling you you're not in a good place. You're angry or you're anxious all the time or you're depressed. Those are indicators on the dashboard of our souls telling us you got to pull over, call roadside assistance, something is wrong. And we can keep praying our way through it and ignoring it only to discover that at some point something's going to break down.
Wow.
And always remember that the repairs are always more expensive than the maintenance is.
We can end the podcast right there.
No.
Thank you, sir, for coming.
But it's real, right?
Yeah,
I mean, it's
yeah,
real. Yeah, it's
yeah.
real.
Wow. Wow. The maintenance will always be cheaper than the repairs.
Yes, sir.
I really don't have anything else to say. I'm just lost for words.
But seriously, so think about it, Riddell. So you are a young, vibrant, you're a thriving entrepreneur, right? Minister, photographer, content creator, right? So think about all of the spaces you occupy. When something happens in your body or in your soul, wisdom says, I cannot continue this same pace and be well enough to finish all that I need to finish,
Right.
which I believe should be focusing on my purpose.
That's it.
Obviously, my family first,
Yeah.
right? My ministry, entrepreneurial endeavors, same as yourself. And so those indicators are designed to be the warning signals to say to us, you got to stop. You got to stop. Like I know so many people when I call or I say, hey, what's going on? How you doing, man? I'm pushing through. I'm making it. Well, you telling me something is wrong. And we can ignore it, and we can even over-spiritualize it, but it does not, and it will not remove those feelings and those emotions or those ailments or those pain points that we feel that's telling us. Somebody said one time that pain is an indicator that something is wrong in my body. That's why it's called dis-ease. Disease is dis-ease. Something is not at ease in my body, and I need to stop and say, hey, what's really going on? And the same that is true with a car is the same that is true with a person's soul, a person's body, a person's heart, a person's mental health. We gotta be sure that we don't ignore the warning signs and get some immediate help. So the person that may be watching this, if you know it's a mental health challenge, I would say reach out to somebody. It doesn't make you a weak person. It makes you a wise person to say something is wrong. If it's something physical, especially men.
Yeah.
We'll go toe hanging off and we won't go to the doctor. I'm all right. You're not all right. Your big toe is hanging off your foot. Go see somebody and get to a place of wellness so that you can not just finish your purpose, but you can finish it with maximum and optimal impact. That's the key.
What would you, I wouldn't say have wished, but if you can have gone back in time, I know your wife played a pivotal part
Sure.
in this. Aside from her, what is something that you've wished back in 2019 that you would have done differently?
Yeah. To avoid the burnout piece, I would say I wish at that point that I understood and embraced the fact that there's a distinct difference between being called and being driven, right? Ambition is not a bad thing. The question is, what is the motivation for my ambition, right? And sometimes if I'm not called to something, that's a reason for me to say no, which is a complete sentence.
Yeah.
My issue is that I was saying yes to everything and everybody except for my own wellness. Hey, can you come help me? And I'm not just talking about preaching. I'm talking about personal, family, friends. Hey, we need this, da 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 da. And I'm Superman. I can go help save the world. And inwardly, I was dying under the pressure of those demands. So I think we have to understand that I'm not called to every situation and every person. It's okay for me to say, no, I have boundaries. And here's one thing that I discovered during that season. The only people who don't want me to have boundaries, you know who they are? The people who are using me.
Wow.
Because if you love me, you want me to take care of myself.
That's it.
You want me to rest. You know what my church family tells me? Pastor, I'm so glad you and Lady Natalie go away like y'all do. Y'all always taking trips. You take a Sunday off. You know what I told the Saints a few months ago? Coming into July. I said, it's coming up on July. Y'all ain't going to be here, and I ain't either. Right?
Yeah.
We got to take some time and pull away. Because if we don't, in the words of Jesus, if we don't come apart, we're going to fall apart,
That's
right?
good.
And
Yeah.
I've learned to do that, and I wish in that season I knew you can be ambitious, you can be a visionary, you don't have to shrink back, but you do need to understand the importance of pace and sustainability, right? You can still do it all to the glory of God. It's the way in which you do it that's going to determine whether or not you can do it at a high level or whether or not you're declining as you're trying to fulfill all of these functions that God has given to you.
Listen, I honestly don't have nothing else. You unpack so much in such short time with so much substance and insight. If there was anything you can say to anybody watching this
Sure.
episode, what would you say to them?
I would say that your purpose and your calling and your impact is great, which requires great boundaries, great sense of purpose, right? And understanding that you may feel like a superhuman, but you're still human. And human beings need time where we can, regroup, rest. We call it recreation, which is what? Literally recreating myself, because that's what rest does for us. And I think I would close by saying the biggest flex is not you bragging about how much you can do. The biggest flex is when you can pull away from it and it still operates and functions because you put some systems and some teams and some people in place to ensure that you're not having to guard it and manage it every single day. If your vision does not require help, your vision is too small.
Wow.
Get some good, solid, healthy people around you to balance it out so that you can take moments and opportunities to enjoy the fruit of your labor. Why work the whole time and never get to enjoy what you're working for? At some point, you can't keep planting a garden without at some point picking from it too.
You heard Pastor Paul Little. Take some time. Listen, I thank you so much.
I appreciate you, brother.
I got some more, but I'm really just lost for words.
Well, you got to have me back for a part two.
Oh, it's going to be a part two. It is going to be a part two, and I just can't stress it enough. Thank you so much.
I appreciate you, brother.
For sacrificing time out of your schedule away from your family to be a part of this episode.
It's
I'm
been a blessing.
humbled.
It's been a blessing. I appreciate you.
Thank you. Viewers, like, share, subscribe. If you're ever in the Macon area and you need a church to go check out Bib Mount Zion. Let us know, how can the people connect with you?
Yeah, we're on YouTube, Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, official Bib Mount Zion, and www.bibmountzion.org. Worship is every Sunday at 9 a.m. and 11 a.m. And we are literally making space for more people because we're in the process of renovating, adding 300 additional seats with our balcony. So we'll reopen in December of this year, but we're having worship in a temporary space on our church's campus at 9 and 11 every Sunday, and on the virtual campus at 9 and 11 as well.
I love it. Listen, like, share, subscribe. God bless.